what is the purpose? What is God's purpose for us being here this morning? Just ideas. There's no wrong answers. Jordan. Worship. Okay, thanks, Coral. You can write. You do the next one, Jesse. Another purpose for why? What's the primary purpose? What do you think the primary reason we come together for? Hear God's word. You can do that one, Jesse. Mel, beg pardon? Community. Yep. Someone else. Beg pardon?
Cuddles.
My ears used to be sharper than they are.
Dad is deaf, so you will have to shout.
What? Cuddles?
Cuddles.
Okay, cuddles. I hadn't imagined that one. Yes, at the back there, yep. Beg pardon? Healing. Okay, yep. Learning about God's truth. I might include that. That's a good one, Tony, but I might include that in God's word. It covers the same thing, but it's a good thing. Yes, Linda? Fellowship. Yep. I might leave that one with community. It's very close. Same deal. Jordan, you're being greedy now. Yep. You can't have two main purposes. You've already given one. So what's the other one? The Bible tells us to. Oh.
Obedience.
So obedience. Very good. How about love? Yep, very good. We're going to run out of balloons. Put it on another balloon. And to stir up one another into love and good work. Now you're starting to sound theological.
Encouragement.
Well, no, he said stir up one another to love and good works. I'm going to quote him. Yes, there's hands everywhere. I'm going to run out. We're going to run out of balloons. Yep. Kingdom culture. Yep. Jackie. Joy. Vicky. Reinforcement. That sounds like a really great concrete. Go! What's going on back there? We just lost one of God's purposes. Right. Okay. We're done for a moment. Right. We're done for a moment. So that's okay. You can sit down, Coral.
I'm just finishing it.
Thank you.
It's very hard to write on a moving target.
Yes. Don't talk. You do that at home. Soups. I keep getting into trouble, don't I, Mandy?
We'll debrief after the service. That's fine.
I can't dig my way out.
No,
okay.
Just move along.
There has to be a primary purpose for coming together. All the things that we have so far covered are they're parts, they're the ingredients, right? But they actually aren't the cake. There is one primary purpose that we haven't quite covered, and Annie, I know you want to tell me, so just yell it out. Grace, that's included in these, but great answer, Annie, great answer, right? But who wants me to break another balloon? Who wants me to not break any balloons? Okay, it's over and done with. So there is one word that none of you came up with, but it's you still want to get in there, don't you? Right? But it's the I'll do it this way, right? This is Paul talking in 1 Corinthians 14:26. He says, when you meet together, which is what we're doing, one of you sing a song. It doesn't have anything to do with corporate singing. He says one of you will sing a song, another will teach, another will tell some special revelation God has given. One will speak in tongues, another will interpret those tongues. They're ingredients. It's a list. There are other lists. You can put more things. You can put prophecy. You can put other things in that list, but they're just a list. He gets to the end of the list and here's the cake. This is what he says. But everything that is done must strengthen all. Someone said reinforcement. Very, very good, right? That's the cake. There's a story of Elijah back in 1 Kings chapter 19, I think it is. And Elijah has had this huge, big showdown with the prophets of Baal, and he's won. God's gone, poof, sent down fire, burn up the altars, all this. And what a hero. And then Jezebel, she's not very happy. And she sends him a text message to say, by this time tomorrow, you're gone. And this mighty man of God who's done this incredible, seen this miracle of God, he goes diddle off into the desert and gets under a tree by himself and says, God, I'm done with life. Just take me away. I'm finished. I'm an embarrassment to myself. Do you know what God does in response to his desperation and his emptiness? He doesn't say, come on, boy, you're a prophet, get up. That's not what prophets do. He bakes him a cake. A cake. And this angel taps him, wakes him up, and it's got this round cake and eat. He eats, he goes back to sleep. Angel comes the second time. Hey, eat. He says, because I've got a journey ahead of you that you won't have the strength for unless you have the nourishment this cake is going to give you. 40 days, that one cake kept him going for. And there's a cake that God has for us every time we gather. And for some of you, you're more desperate than others. But that's the cake that God has for us. And Paul, he goes a little bit deeper about this. And he says in 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, verse 11, so encourage. I thought if I ripped this, it would come off. Yes, it would. So encourage each other and give each other strength. The word "and" in that sentence that Paul's giving us, it's connecting the dots. It's cause and effect. And what Paul is saying, encouragement will guarantee that you strengthen people. The writer of Hebrews, he says this in Hebrews 3 verse 13. But encourage one another daily, as long as it is called day. And here's the reason. So that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. To strengthen someone is to put a wrecking ball through deception. It's to encourage someone. It takes away the enemy's capacity to deceive us and discourage us and to get us telling ourselves things that are not true because we're just in a not a good space in our head. And the same writer of Hebrews, in Hebrews 10:24, he gives us like this hamburger. And it's got 3 layers. The beginning of the hamburger is this. We must consider how to encourage each other, to show love, and to do good things. And just quoting from you. That's where you got it from. That's the start of the hamburger. Then this middle layer of this hamburger, sometimes people use it as a stick to guilt people into being in church. And it's this. And let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do. That's a stick. But here's the reason. Here's the reason to gather together. But encourage one another, especially as the day of his return is drawing near. This is not a worship service. It's not a Bible teaching session. Church, by God's definition in the new covenant that he made with us, it's a swap meet for encouragement. That's it. Under the old covenant, people came together for worship, to offer sacrifices. Like that was the primary focus because they couldn't do it by themselves. They couldn't worship God by themselves. They needed a priest to be the intermediary. But we don't. We can go straight. We don't need a priest to stand in between us and God anymore. Our worship is designed to be daily between us and Him. Worship is not singing a song. You can sing a song and not worship God. In Romans 12, verse 1, Paul says this, I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. When we come to God, I say, God, take all of me. Use me. I'm available. I want to give you all of me. That is true worship. And then Paul goes on to say that when we begin with that, we only need to know God's mercy. That's all we need to know to respond like that. Not God's judgment, God's mercy. And then if we will respond in worship like that, we will be open to changing the way we think. And we will be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And then we will know and be able to test and approve God's will, His perfect and pleasing, beautiful will for our life. We've been doing a series on identity, and we've been doing a series on God's purpose. And we've asked some questions for people to throw in, and we're going to look at some of those questions this morning. Someone sent me a question in advance in a text message, and it's a longish question, but in essence, I'm just going to read out the little bit that's the essence of it. I've never found my purpose in life. I just exist. I've asked God for years and still don't know what it is. Was I born to have a purpose and missed it? Now that thought of that person is probably echoed in more than one person in the room today. And so we're going to have an open discussion this morning. I love the way Jesus communicated. He asked questions and he received questions. And I think there's a place in the life of every church where it's not just one person talking up the front, but we interact and we ask questions. It doesn't make those at the front experts. We're going to do this together. So, Mandy, just hearing that, do you have any thoughts on that as we begin?
I think when I hear that question, my first thought is that I think identity and purpose are very, very intertwined with one another. And I think when we have a crisis of purpose, we're also having an identity crisis of who we are. Because our purpose isn't a task that we do or a title that we have or a job that we have. Our purpose is who we are in God, which gives everything we do amazing purpose. Every breath we take is filled with purpose, not because of the task we're doing, but because of who we are and who we're doing it for. And so I believe crisis of purpose is linked to crisis of identity and maybe not understanding who you are in God. Because when you know who you are in God, it gives dignity and purpose and worth to everything you do. The seemingly meaningless or the seemingly mundane. You know, the person who goes to a job that doesn't seem like it has a lot of purpose has the same kingdom purpose to the same degree as the pastor or whatever job or title that you hold in esteem that you think is more purposeful. It is not. Everything we do is purposeful because of who we are and who has created us. And so my prayer for that person asking that question is that you would have a fresh revelation of your value and worth in God. And that frees us to do all sorts of things. Seemingly important things, seemingly very unimportant things. It frees us to be a stay-at-home mum. It frees us to have a career. It frees us to do anything, because everything we do has purpose.
And I think when you understand the purpose of why we gather, just by being here, you are adding to the encouragement. And your purpose, like there, if encouragement is the thing that must be here, how do we measure the success of a Sunday? I think sometimes we don't measure the way God measures things. And if in God's eyes the success of a Sunday, the gathering of people, is how much encouragement took place, you can come empty because you need encouragement. You can come full and encourage others. It can be both ways. You can receive encouragement and give. And so every single one has a purpose. When Paul writes about making our bodies living sacrifices, sometimes that sacrifice, we take our body to church. We take our body here, and it's a sacrifice, because you could sit at home with a coffee watching Redgum online. But see, and you could worship God at home, but you worship's what we give God, encouragement is what we give each other. And you can't do that when you're not together. So your purpose, part of our purpose, is to daily, to weekly encourage and strengthen each other. There was another question, and it was probably unrelated to this, and I might talk about it separately. We can ask any questions today about anything, but I think I might just leave. But I want to just say appreciation to the person that sent that, and I will cover it. But any questions on purpose and identity that we can just throw around? Just anyone. Yep.
I'd always wondered what my purpose was in God, for God.
Hold on.
I always wondered what my purpose was in God and for God, looking for this mystical purpose. And he's let me know recently that it's who I am, which is exactly what Mandy was saying. It's who I am, and whatever you do in a day, he can use that. He can use the littlest thing to his glory, and it's all up to him. It's his decision. So whatever we are, we offer him.
I love the God setups. We talked about it last week, about at least half of the miracles that Jesus did. He had no clue. He just was going somewhere in his daily routine, and he came across a need and he met it. And it was a God setup, and in that, his purpose, God's will, was achieved. But you don't need to know. You just be obedient in the moment, and there are setups all the time. I speak to people that tell me these are exciting moments when it was a God setup and they just accidentally stepped into it, but God's put it there. God, it's his job to do that. Another question or comment? Yep.
How connected is our purpose to our gifts?
Great question. How connected is our purpose to our gifts? Mandy Jane Rayment? Actually, you're a Williams now, aren't you?
I'm a Williams now.
You'll always be a Rayment in my eyes. Genetically.
I think we enjoy tasks when they are connected to our gifts, and I think ideally, of course, God wants us to be functioning in our natural gifts. Are there times when we need to function outside of our giftings? Absolutely. So I think, ideally in God's kingdom, God says God prepares good works in advance for us to do. They're going to be good works that are in line with our ability, our passions. God uses you how he's designed you. And the cool thing is he has designed you and prepared the good works for you to be this perfect match for each other. Having said that, in the day-to-day practicalities of life, there are heaps of times we're having to do stuff. I wish I could say that I don't do admin because it's not my God gifting, but someone in our family has to do family admin. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of both. I would say when it comes to purpose, I think probably for me, my generation grew up in church. I don't know what it's been like in different denominations or for different generations. There was a lot of focus on God's purpose being a very narrow, specific thing, a calling, and it really was a title. It was a title. And I don't think that's biblical, and I don't think that's healthy. And I think that, it became this tiny, narrow target that it was like, well, if I didn't get to be that, or if I didn't get to do that, somehow I've missed God's purpose. And that is so not biblical and not true. There is no way to miss God's purpose unless you disobey God. But you don't need a certain job description. You don't need a certain role on a Sunday. You don't need your life to have gone a certain way. You don't need your marriage to have gone a certain way or your family to have gone a certain way to fulfill the purpose of God on your life. It is like it says in the Bible, nothing, not demon, nor angel, nor heaven and earth can separate us from the love of God. Nothing can separate us from the purpose of God. No decision any other human being has made can stop God's purposes being outworked in your life. Now, sometimes it just looks different to what we assumed it would be. So we tell ourselves that we've missed God's purpose. But that is not what God is saying to you. Our wrong understanding of our purpose can sometimes deceive us into thinking we've missed it or we're never going to find it. It's like life happens while you're making plans. It's like God's purpose is happening while you're sitting there looking for God's purpose. And he's just like, just get up each day, love the person in front of you, look after your family, go to work. I think I'll finish with this. I think we've really done a disservice to people's Monday to Friday jobs. That is so purposeful. God is there. God goes with you Monday to Friday into your jobs. We've mistakenly made the focus a 1-hour church service as if that's where we outwork our purpose. It's not where, that's the icing, it's not the cake. The cake is our normal, everyday lives. The message puts it, take your ordinary, everyday life and put it before God as a living sacrifice. That is where your purpose is outworked, whether that's being an admin officer at your workplace, whether you're a teacher, whether you're a garbage collector, whatever you are, that is where God's purpose is outworked in your life. And that is just as holy and worthy and valuable as any other vocation. And it's as worshipful as the hour where we happen to gather together on a Sunday together.
And it also changes with time. And as we get a little longer in the tooth and we get a little older, I can remember most of my life has been involved in youth ministry. Now I get to play with adults, but most of my life was with young people. And I remember we planted a church in Sydney. And one day I was picking up all these old ladies and chucking them in the back of my ute and taking them to church. And I'm thinking, what's happened? What's happened? I used to always pick up all the young kids and take all the youth somewhere. And now I've got these, and I'm thinking, our purpose and our expression of that, the expression changes, but the purpose doesn't. And so God's purpose for your life is to encourage others, to influence others, to sow into others, to take your one life and make a difference in the world around you. That is such a gift. Yes.
About 10 years ago, I came across Marketplace Ministries where they have 7 mountains of influence: education, entertainment, business, etc., etc. And it's areas of influence in your own life where you take God into that situation and ask the Lord for opportunities to share and share the Lord with them. So,
And it's amazing what happens when you make yourself available in those moments. So, another question. Can be about anything, but just another question. Tracy.
How do you think the story of Jonah and obedience fits into the journey of being in his will, his way?
It's a great question, because Jesus made it clear that if you love me, you'll obey me. And I think in our modern church culture, we've made a really big deal about how much we are to love God. But John, in 1 John, he actually says, don't tell me how much you love God. If you don't love your brother, your sister, who you can see, don't tell me how much you love God. It's got to be expressed out. And so when Jesus said, if you love me, you'll obey me, true worship is obedience. And so in Jonah's situation, he wanted to run from obedience, and what was at stake was a whole city of people. And when he came to a place where he was now willing to obey God, his one life changed the whole course of a city. And you don't know how much what your one life can do. When God came to Abraham and gave him a direction and a promise about how those that he would bless all the nations of the world through this one man, do you know how that started? 3 looked like humans walking past his tent, and he brought them over and he baked them a cake. And it turned out they were prophetic angels that spoke over his life, and they began the promise that Abraham would influence, his life would influence the whole world. And it begins with, and teach your children. It just starts with a little bit, that little bit of obedience. I'll start with this one thing in front of me, and how that has gone, and how we are under this blessing of Abraham because there was obedience. And so you can't separate obedience and your love for God. Steve? Yep.
In the context of what we do and why we do it, the question I've got is why. We're encouraged in business to know our why and to help that fuel why we do what we do. So why do we do what we do?
So are you saying we need to know why, or are you asking why? Both. Okay. Last week I made a statement, and it was all behaviour moves towards a goal. And whatever we, in our thinking, we imagine we have needs, and whatever those deep longings are, we form goals daily. All the time we are setting goals, because everything we do is moving towards what we believe will meet our deepest needs. If you're in business, to know why you're in business is a deeper question than someone who has no relationship with God. Because the goal is simply make some money, and more the better. But if you're in business, there's a deeper purpose behind it. And so knowing why God has put you in that position and given you that role and that influence, that's a personal journey, and God doesn't hide that from us. If we really want to know, God will give us those answers. Martin, yep. Why didn't you do this when I was down here last time?
How do we know the difference, or is there a difference between God's purpose for your life and you just chasing your own ambitions and calling it God's purpose, and like in line with if this doesn't happen, it mustn't be God's purpose for my life? Or like, because I found myself like not, I don't know, starting a business or applying for a job because things haven't fallen through because I've said, no, if it doesn't happen, it's not God's purpose for my life.
Mandy.
I think a good litmus test for whether something is God's purpose or just your own will running ahead of God, and I think this is important even when you think it is God's purpose, to check in every now and then and get before God and ask yourself, would I lay this down? Would I let go of this? Am I willing to let go of this? I really want it. I think it's God. I've been convinced it's been God for maybe years or months, but if I realise that it's not, would I walk away? Would I let it go? Would I release it? And I think there's lots of patterns in the Bible of even when something is God and it's actually even a dream God's put in someone's heart, you look through the Old Testament and you see time and time again, God still tested that and asked the person to lay it down. God told Abraham he would be the father of many nations. That was a God dream. But a God dream can actually become an idol in our lives. We can want it almost more than we want God. We can get to a point and it could be completely a God dream and completely a noble, wonderful promise. For me, it was my kids. When I had kids, I so wanted them to end up in heaven with me that it was almost... I felt like I almost couldn't live if my kids weren't going well. I almost couldn't cope if it looked like my kids were struggling and not going forward in God. And I realised that completely God-ordained desire had an unhealthy grip on my heart. And so there have been moments as a mum where I've had to surrender that and give it over to God and cut those strings that I had attached to my obedience so that I could surrender. So I'd say you've got to check these things every now and then, particularly when you feel like a bit over the top emotional response to things. When your goals start to get blocked, sometimes that's a sign that something else is driving that. And then even if it is a God thing, He's still going to take us through a journey of surrendering that and letting that dream die sometimes before God resurrects it in His perfect timing. And it's like what Tracy was saying, it's this constant journey of obedience and surrender. And then the wonderful thing is, when you actually let go of it and surrender and obey, that enables you to be the kind of person with the character to then carry the dream when God brings it back to life. It's like we want the keys to the Ferrari and God's like, you're on your L plates. Like, I do want to give you that, but if I give you that right now, you're gonna crash and burn. So trust the preparation and the journey, and that God has those good things for you when you're ready. When we first went to Sydney, we left Bairnsdale in 2000 and something or other, Coral, wasn't it? 3, yep. And when we went to Sydney, we prayed, and I can tell you a whole story of how God prophetically and miraculously got us there. And all the 16 years we're in Sydney, I never knew if we'd ever come back to Bairnsdale. In fact, I'm just a little white boy from the bush, and we're living in suburbia, and I can remember driving home one day, and I'm just a few streets from home, and I'm looking at the trees. And I started talking to the trees. I said, I feel sorry for you trees. You're city trees. You don't know what it's like to live in the country. Right. But when we started Redgum, we were pastoring a church in Sydney for 9 years that we started from scratch. Martin and Jess were part of that church at that time. And when we turned and came home, for 16 years I'd never had a green light to come back to Bairnsdale. I didn't know if we'd retire back here. I didn't know what we would do. And in a one phone call between my brother Jeff and I, something went like this, and I knew we were to come back to Bairnsdale and start Redgum. Never prayed about it. I've never prayed once about whether we should start Redgum. Not once. I just knew that it was God's purpose and His timing, and it was what we were to do. And so
sometimes in our journey with God, we will know things, what his purpose and will is, just instantly. Paul says that if we will allow his thinking to our thinking to align with his thinking, we can test and approve and know his perfect will. We can. We don't need someone else. And yet there are times we need other people to help us, especially if you're thinking, I love this girl, she's amazing. And she may not be, but you're too blind. We sometimes can get blind because we just want something. Another question. Probably one or two more and then we'll wrap up. Yeah, Moors.
What is Redgum's mission?
Permission? Mission. Wow. You know how churches have mission statements? I think mission statements are a great idea. We don't have one. We have no vision for what we're going to be like in 5 years' time. Haven't got a clue. Do we? Okay. Have some ideas, but fundamentally, our mission is to actually be like light in darkness, to be able to point people to a God that is the true hope for our community, and to allow God access so much into our life that just naturally we share him wherever we go. As a people, if we can do that, if we can encourage each other, and if we can encourage those around us, anything is possible. And I would hate to make my own imagination limit what God could do through us as a people in this world. Yeah, I might, Danielle, I might go over here just because I've already had one. Oh, okay, little short one.
It's a very important word. I in worship this morning, I got a vision of the Lord, and he said he's shrouded in mystery. At sometimes he takes back the curtains of the universe and reveals himself to us. And he does that through love. And I remembered what Alex said about that Elijah was made the cake by God. Yes. That cake, he could have done anything. He could have told Elijah to get on with his job, but he made a cake for him. He showed love to him, and he took care of him. And that's what the Lord wanted the message to be shared with us, that he wants to reveal his love to us, and every now and again we see it, and that's his part of his mystery.
Thank you. Yep.
Just quickly, I've got family that don't follow the Lord, so in my heart I want them to follow the Lord, but I've realised no matter how much you try and tell them about the Lord, it doesn't get in. All you can do is pray for them and love them, and not try and put any sort of pressure on them. And I guess it even gets to education when you talk about purpose in life. People have direction they can go, but if you give them something like trying to tell them what they need to know, it just doesn't fit in. You've got to love them, but I think what God's telling us is to pray for people, and pray when it's necessary. When you can't say all the words you want to say to them, you can only tell God and let the Holy Spirit do the rest.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, Mandy, do you want to last little wrap up something?
I might be stealing Aaron's thunder, but on that, Aaron's not here today, but his dad passed away 3 weeks ago. So last weekend we were up in Sydney for his dad's funeral. And Aaron, his whole adult life, kind of carried this burden of knowing that his dad wasn't a Christian, and praying and looking for an opportunity. And there'd not really been one that had presented. And I don't want to overshare, so I'll just give the headlines. But we realised that his dad was declining quite rapidly in the last few weeks. He'd had cancer that had spread throughout his whole body. And so Aaron and his sister went up 2 weeks before his dad passed away to basically say goodbye. And thank God he was conscious still, and he was able to hold a conversation. And they were able to both share Jesus with him, but because of the whole lifetime of praying for him, when it looked like nothing was happening and nothing was shifting, and even before Aaron went up, full of faith wife, I was like, sweetie, don't expect anything. Like, just be grateful. Be grateful that he's still with us and that you're going to get to say goodbye, but don't go with any expectations. You may not be able to talk about Jesus. I just wanted the pressure.
He's always been very resistant to God, hasn't he?
Yes. Very. And that's been a real burden on Aaron as a son and a Christian, feeling like somehow he was failing God and failing his dad, that he hadn't been able to find a way to make this happen. And I didn't want Aaron to carry that for that last conversation. I just said, he is God's creation. He is God's responsibility. You just go be a son, and whatever naturally happens, but no pressure. I was like, no expectations, expect the worst. Anyway, they got there, and this was completely a God miracle, because when they arrived, he was soft and open, and he said, I've been expecting this conversation and I've been waiting for it. He's like, bring it on. And they were able to sit with their dad and share Jesus with him. And he said, well, I want to tell you, I've already been talking to the big fella, and I've been saying my sorries, and we've been having some conversations, and they were able to pray with Aaron's dad and have healing, powerful conversations, and it was a complete miracle. And it wasn't anything that Aaron did. It was God. And so, I just want to share that as an encouragement.
So, sometimes slow death, like dying from cancer and not a car accident, is God's gift. Sometimes when we hear the angels humming, people do business with God in ways you have no idea. And sometimes what seems like a tragedy of a man that's a year younger than me dying from prostate cancer, what a tragedy seems so young, and yet that gift of cancer enabled him to do work with God and work with his family in a way that, and his dad was able to say things to Aaron, I'm sure Aaron will share at some stage, but said things that he's never said to his son in his whole life. Aaron had never heard come out of his dad's mouth. And
one thing they said to his dad, because his dad didn't want them to technically pray the prayer with him, because he's not that kind of person. And I think he'd already made the decision in his heart already, that the fruit of it was in the openness and the softness. And he said to Aaron, I want you to give a religious talk at my funeral and make sure you share at my funeral. But one thing that Alicia and Aaron said to Ross when they left, like, well, you better officially surrender, pretty much, because they said, this new you that we've just encountered today, we want eternity with this dad. We want to get to enjoy you as this soft and open and loving dad for the rest of our lives in eternity together. So can you promise us that you're going to do that, so that we can enjoy this new you for the rest of eternity? And we really believe that he did surrender to God.
Okay, there's just one hand up the back. I'm just going to run up there. Well, this is the last one.
I was, just listening and thinking about all the questions and people saying, what does our church look like, and what's God's will, and who am I? And something that I thought about last week when Lex was preaching was, Jesus said to the disciples, who do you say that I am? Who do I? Who do you? Who do we as a church say that Christ is? And because we're part of the whole body of Christ, and we have a function, and the main one is to love one another despite everything. He said, Jesus' prayer for all believers in John 17 verse 20, my prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one. Father, just as you are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one.
I am in you, in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. And, you know, that's Jesus' prayer for us all as believers. That's his will for us. That love, his love, glorified through you and I, is something that I often wonder, how do we, the commission, the harvest. But if we are being Christ's glory, the harvest will come to us.
It's very true, very, very true. If we, as God's kids, will just encourage each other. Jeremy, great to see you. Alana, how good. Pam, right? Like, honestly, if we can just simply, when we gather, encourage each other. Joel, thank you for coming and serving today with mixing. Like, there are people that we don't have enough people on cameras often. There are so many ways that the team get discouraged because there aren't enough bodies to do things. Our live streaming is so dependent upon people doing things. Like, there's so many practical ways we can encourage. And when we encourage, we strengthen. And that takes away the enemy's weapons that he can use against us. It's amazing. And then unity builds. When you feel encouraged by someone, you go, gee, that Daniel's a nice bloke. I like Daniel. I always feel encouraged when I'm hanging around Daniel. And so this love is expressed in reality and very practical ways. And it's God's will. It's his purpose for us. So, we're done. We're done?
Yeah.
We're done. Okay, I'm going to pray. God, I ask you to just give us a heart to encourage and to allow you to use our one life, that we would give our bodies as living sacrifices, that we would be directed by you, that we would find people to encourage with no strings attached, and that we would see supernatural miracles as a result of what you do through our very, very ordinary lives. And I thank you for that.